So let's start. First, we will see about the functional programming and its necessity. First of all, why we need a functions? There are different paradigms of programming. Till now we are working. We never worked on a single function, but all the things were executed. We are able to solve some problems. Means this is one kind of programming paradigm. Aspect oriented is what we have done till now. Next is functional programming. For functional programming, the first use case is code reusability. How we will do the code reusable? Let's assume that we have a use case where we are printing the same hello world these many times. Some 5 times I'm printing. So instead of you printing the same thing 5 times, you can define as a function. Def is a keyword we use in Python for defining a function. We should specify some function name. Within that, you print it. Hello world. So instead of you making this, so you can do the hello that much times. I can do the same 5 times. Hello world. So I will execute it. You see now, in this case, it will execute the same thing multiple times. Now, okay, this is like a small statement, one print statement. But what if you have some kind of complex logic? Let's say you want to create a Fibonacci or binomial expression. If you want to work on a binomial expression, you take a number, for that you do the entire calculation and you give the final result. This is how it works. Similarly, if you want to do the same thing for another number, called as say 34. Now, did you see you have implemented the same logic? Just the number is changing. If I do the same thing again for a different number, maybe this time I'm taking a negative floating point value and I'm getting the answer. Now, did you see in all these cases, the same code is repeating, right? With slightest small change. So whatever the code which is repeating, you can create like a function. So in method 2, I will define a function. You give some name to this function and you do it. See, in all the cases, you are taking the value of n. Okay, so you can take n or you can take x. So whichever it's comfortable for you. It doesn't mean that every time you should take n. Same like this, I want to implement. So instead of implementing directly, I want to implement it another variable, say called as like a x. Same thing I'm implementing with x. I can implement the same variable also just to show you difference. And I'm printing the result. Now the point is, instead of you repeating the same logic again and again, say the same 3 values if you want to execute, you are just making a call to that function with that number. So no matter how much large the logic is, you need not worry. So just we can reuse the things. So this is a quick way of doing. So this is the concept of code reusability. Now let me go for like one more thing. This time, we want to calculate the even numbers or odd numbers like that. If I take in this case, you see, I am taking a boundary. Within that boundary, I'm calculating the even numbers. So did you see? So we have already calculated the even numbers in multiple times. Same thing I'm taking. But did you see? The lower and upper bounds are like this. Similarly, if you want to do the same thing for a different boundary, so then what we need to do? Again, we need to implement it separately. Same logic will be there, but so only the upper and lower bound values will be changing. So in this space, if you have, means you have two values for which you want to work. So we want to calculate the functions. So define get even numbers. So that is what you are expecting, right? Instead of lower bound and higher bound, maybe you use a minimum value and a maximum value. So this is one of the best practices, that what are the variables we are using in the global scope, means outside the functions, should not be used in the function names. That is a best practice to avoid any kind of confusion. So, and so within that, I do the logic. See, whatever the logic I have, I try to write it here. So when I'm trying to write here, So now you see what will happen. I have written like a even numbers. It works. And within this, it don't know what is the lower and minimum. So instead of lower bound, I will replace with a minimum value. Instead of upper bound, I'll replace with a maximum value. Now it will execute all the things and it will give the result. So this is how you get the results. So instead of you redoing the same thing multiple times, you can just do like this. Now, did you see? Instead of you writing the entire code again and again, you can just reuse these things. So if I have get even numbers, sure. So it will work in the same way. So this is a point of code reusability. And apart from that, what is else we can do? We can modularize a problem. So modularize means, let's say someone want to create a cycle. If you want to create a bicycle cycle, we need to create first wheels, then we need to join them. We need to see the other kind of functionalities like that for everything. So we have different parts. You can divide like everything as a module. Okay. So let's say you want to create a calculator. Calculator means addition, multiplication, subtraction, division. So you give one function for one thing, one function for one thing like that. Then in future, if you want to change the division to do much better things or like anything, you can do all of that. And then what is this interesting point? So functions are treated as the first class objects in Python. What do you mean by first class objects means? You can treat it in the same fashion as like ordinary built-in objects. So what is that? It can do all of that. I will tell slowly. So first, let's go for the things. What is a function? How do you create it? Till now we understood. And when you're creating a functions, you need to understand that function will take inputs. That's what you understood till now. Sometimes it is not taking inputs. But in general, whether it takes inputs or not, every function will return something. That is for sure. The default return from a function is a none. So this is what you need to remember. Let's take the first example. So where I am taking this scenario where function with no arguments and no return. I defined a function. I am not taking any arguments. I am just doing an ordinary print. I am not returning anything. Then, sir, how can I know that it is returning something? So if I make a call, so first thing I want to know whether the function can be called or not. For every function, there will be two parts, the function definition and the function call. If you see in this case, did you see that the function you made a call, it is executing. If you make the same call multiple times also, it will execute. Now, the point is like, what if I place a print around it? So till now, you don't need a print. But still, if I write a print around it, what will happen? Observe carefully. When I did ordinary print, I got hello world is hello function is called. Whereas what is this hello function is called and a none is also coming? Means when you call the function, internally it executed this, and when it came back, it is returning none. So that is the reason you are getting a none. If you can observe carefully, so we are not returning anything, that's why it is returning none. So if I return something else, say if I take and return, say return something. Now, did you see that it is returning 123? Means whatever you returned, that it will return. If I say return none, then it will return none. So if you don't return anything also, it will return none only. So that is what you need to understand. Default function return is none. Now, let me introduce you with another built-in function called as callable. So as I told about these functions, I am telling with the next built-in function. If you remember in the 64 to 69 built-in functions, I think I covered most of them. Callable means for every object, we can check whether something is callable or not. What is mean by callable means for that object, can we apply this call? Generally for functions only you apply this call, right? For a variables, you cannot apply that. So just to show you that, I'm asking for the hello. Hello is an object. For that object, can I apply callable? Yes, hello is an object which can be applicable. So you did like a true. It's true, it is saying when you do. Whereas in this case, observe carefully. I am making a hello as a call. So then what will happen? This entire call will be replaced by the return value, which is a none. For none, is it callable? So this is one of the entry question. So be careful. And then similarly, if I directly ask none also, the same thing it says, none is not a callable. Similarly, let me take one more object. If I go for like a string, if my string is like a Python word string, for that I'm asking, is it a callable? A string cannot be callable, right? If you make a call, what will happen? It throws an error. That string object is not callable. So this is what you need to understand. And the last definition, so need to understand is with respect to the functions are like a first class objects. What do you mean by first class object? Means they were treated same like a built-in objects. Means what do you mean by sir? Let's take a small variable. Sure, let's take a small object. If I say like number one is equal to 122.13, which is like a floating point value. So for that floating point value, we have all these values, right? If you ask like the value, the type, it has a type, it has a ID of that number, and we also have a DAR, which is the list of attributes. Fine, all these things is good. Now for this object, similarly, if I go for like a built-in one, let's say the print, print is like a keyword, and also it's a function, right? Print is a function we have. So for the print function, I will ask, it says print is a built-in function and it has a type means built-in function or a method. This is one type, and it is giving this address location, and it is having some attributes. This is fine. Built-in function also you have seen how it is getting. Now let's go for our function, which is hello. In the top, we have defined the hello function, right? For that function also, I do the same thing. I will ask, hey, for the hello, can you give me the hello? It says it's of hello function. When I'm asking what is the type, it says function. So print is a built-in function or method. This is a function. And it also has an address location. It also has an attributes. So now don't you think like it is treated in the same like others? So this is all about the functions with the first class arguments. So now you understood. If I go ahead into the functions, now I want to take the functions with some kind of arguments. So till now, I didn't take any arguments to the function, but now I want to take some function with arguments. So how to do that, sir? Let's take a simple function without any arguments first. So if I take like the first like this, I took a function without any arguments, then what will happen? If I make a call, it will execute in the same fashion. Say hello function is called. Now, similarly, if I next take a function with some arguments, argument means what? Within the function definition, you need to pass the value. So if I say name, then it will execute. Of course, I didn't make a call to it, right? Now, let's say I'm making a function call to it. So till now, whatever the function call I made, in the same fashion, I do like a function call. So hello name. Did you see that it is throwing an error? What is the reason for this error? If you observe carefully, it is saying that, hey, function hello is missing one required positional argument. What is this positional argument? This hello. For that, we need to pass some value. If you pass some value, it will take that value. Say, if I'm passing the value right now, hello of Python, it is taking. And it doesn't matter what you are passing. If you pass like hello, something else also it works. If I say hello 123, so it will execute. But did you see what is the error? The error is not in terms of acceptance, but here there is an error. means you cannot add these two together. What if you were replacing it with a better, way? So if I do like a f string of hello name, can I do like this also, right? If I do like this, it will work. Means it doesn't matter what data type you are passing. If it is expecting two arguments, you need to pass two arguments. Whether it works or not, it depends upon the logic within it. But so when you are passing an argument, it will take like that. And there are other languages where if you are going for things which are beyond your limit, means like as I had defined one, if I pass two arguments, there are few languages I don't want to mention, but they will be taking the arguments and they will ignore the remaining values. But that's not the case with Python. If it is expecting like one argument, you need to pass only one argument. If you pass below this or like more than that, it doesn't matter. It will not accept. So at the same time, if you have a single argument, you can pass a function call with two ways. One is like a positional arguments. The second one is like a keyword arguments. So till now, we know that function definition is like this. You can pass the values. So what is the other way of doing means? This is called as call by keyword arguments. Means whatever the exact variable which was defined here, the same name we need to give and we need to use. So when you use that, it will work like that. So it will be perfectly working now. So you can pass like this also. In the same fashion, here also, one important point you need to observe is that it is not that exact name we need to pass. If I pass like, name one, does it work? No, because there is no variable called as name one defined here in this function. Similarly, you should pass exact names at the same time. You should not pass more than one arguments. So the conclusion is, for a function, you can pass variables two ways. One is positional arguments and keyword arguments. Most commonly, you know these things, but this is something newly you will learn if you are new to Python. But now, what if you have more than one argument? Let's say you are planning to have like two arguments. So in this case, when you have two arguments, say I am defining some function. So as you know, if I make a function call, if I say like, hello, if I pass like a single argument, did you see what happened? It is throwing an error. What is saying? Hey, I need two positional arguments. So missing two positional arguments values and the name and age it is saying. It is exactly giving what it is expecting. And similarly, if you place like a single value, say like, hello of, say, Narendra. If I give hello of Narendra, will it work? I gave name, but it will throw an error further because you gave two values, but I am expecting two arguments. One of them still don't have a value. See, the error is like very much defined, right? Okay. So it doesn't matter what data type you give. If I give like only age, like 27, if I give, does it take? It doesn't matter like what data type you are passing. Function call will not check the data type, but it will check the number of values only. Whereas if I pass like both the things together, what we can do? I can do like hello, same Narendra, and I give like 27. So I give like Narendra and 27. So it will work perfectly. Did you see? Narendra's age is 27. But the problem here is that in the call by position, it doesn't matter what you pass. It is expecting two arguments. You pass two arguments. So if I do the same values in a reverse way, let's say 27 and Narendra if I give, then what will happen? 27's age is now Narendra it is saying. So that is a common problem with call by position. Whereas, so sometimes why it happens means we are not sure like what you are passing and it can lead to the issues. The next thing that we have is about call by keyword arguments where I will explicitly write name is equal to same Narendra and like age is equal to 27. Now, in this way, if I write, so no matter if I do in this way or if I change the positions, it doesn't matter. In both the cases, it will work in the same way. Narendra says is 27, Narendra says is 27. Because I am writing to the same variable. Now, did you all understand? So why we need to go for the specific things? So similarly, as you know, if you go beyond these values also, it will throw in error. That also you understood. So similarly, if I want to take some kind of real-time example, so you want to check whether something is divisible or not. So divisibility means what? So you want to define a function. So for that, division means like two values should be there. And for that, you want to do the division. I can define like two variables like m and n, and I want to do. Now the point is like m percentile n is equal to 0, then it is divisible, right? So we can write in a better way that yes, this is divisible. So else, this is not divisible. So not divisible, I can write. So simple, right? So this is how I wrote a function. Now what is the point? I can pass multiple variables. So I will pass like two values because it expecting two values. I'm passing like two arguments. It is working perfectly. So that is how I am passing like two arguments. So then you can try for like 3 arguments, 4 arguments, 5 arguments, and so on. Of course, there is a limit on the number of arguments you can pass. It doesn't say no, but like, so, it is not a good practice if you're passing more arguments. There is a better way, for that I will tell afterwards. But let's focus right now on the written values. So earlier I showed you how to return a value. But what happens when you have like multiple returns in a different way? Let me see. As in the previous case, I'm taking two arguments and I'm returning none. So I'm not returning anything first of all. If I don't return anything, what will happen? So let's make a function call. So how do you make a function call? You make a function call like this. If I make a call to it, you see, nothing will happen. Say like instead of that, if I go with like say uh, return hello world. If I do like this, what will happen? It is not coming in the output. You remember earlier within the function, you used to write a print statement. As a developer, the first question you will get is whether to write a print here within the function or outside. It depends upon what you want to do with the function. If you want certain actions to be done by the function, you just write print within it. Whereas if you want those actions to be used outside, then you return it and assign to something. Say here in this case, instead of printing, I'm returning it. Then how do I see the outputs? I need to assign to some variable and I need to get it. I'm assigning to some variable and I'm trying to get it. Now, did you see it is saying that it's of type string? And you already know that the default return from that particular function is like none by default if you don't specify anything. So what if I am mentioning that, so I have written like multiple returns. If I write like multiple returns, what will happen? A function will have only one return executed. Return is the last executing statement in a function. As already you have one return, it will not go down. If I comment this one, then see what will happen. It will return it. And return by default, what will happen? It will return like this, right? None. Or explicitly, if you give like a return none also, it will do the same job. It will return none. Similarly, if I am doing the same return in a different way. So as I told you, if I do like a return as a none, will it happen? The code is not reachable because the first return is encountered, it will stop. So if you have one return in a if condition, one return in a else condition, whichever executes, it will do that. But in this case, like this, it happens. And similarly, so the most important thing, so whenever you have this value, you understood about this one. Let me comment it. And here, let me place a comma. Sometimes you need to understand the comma plays a very crucial role. So the moment you have a single value followed by a comma, it becomes a tuple. So this is what you need to be very much aware of. Similarly, if I have a return 123. So return 123. When I did a 123, I got like an integer. But if the same integer I have and I placed a dot after that, then see what will happen? It will say it is a float. Now the same thing, so float, after that if I have a comma, then it will say like it is of type, so tuple. So this is what you should be aware. Sir, what if I have two commas? Will it work? What if I have two commas? Will it work? No. It will throw like a syntax error. That you should be aware. So similarly, what if I have written, so 123 dot, comma, so, and you have one brace. And after that, if I have a comma, so then it will return. In this case, it will treat like a tuple of tuple. So, and similarly, if I have some kind of expression, say like I'm giving some expression, so then what will happen? The result of that expression will be stored. So this is what you need to understand about the functions. Next, going further on these written values, the most important point is the unpacking. Whenever you have multiple written values, how to handle that? Generally, we know the rules of functions, but generally think about the unpacking logic. When you have two statements where you are assigning to two variables, instead of doing that, if you are doing both in one shot, we can do, right? You return two values and you have two variables exactly, then unpacking will work. Similarly, so whenever you have some kind of logic where you are defining like three variables and then you are using it, rather you define three values and three variables and you can do the same unpacking. But if you are having any kind of mismatch in these numbers, say like if you have more variables or so more values, in both the cases it doesn't work. But there is one extreme case where you have one variable and all values comma separated. I told without having braces also, it will treat like a tuple. So till now we understood it. So if there were some built-in functions also which will return multiple values. If you see till now, you worked on multiple functions, right? Built-in functions. If you take the example of int will take a single value and it will return a single value. Power will take like two variables, but it will return a single value. Whereas div mod will take two values and returns two values, right? Means within built-in functions also, we have this kind of variety. In the same fashion, so if you wanna do the same thing with your function, let's say I define one function. In that function also I'm defining. Let's say in this function I'm returning two values. So if I make a call, what will happen? Nothing will happen because you are not using it. When you return the moment, you need to assign to some variable, right? So if I right now assign to some variable called as a result, the result will become a tuple of two values. Don't you agree? Yes. So if you want to get like two values out of it, so the only way is like from that result, you extract zeroth value and first value and you assign it. Whereas if you want that in a better way, so the moment when you are getting the values from the function itself, instead of assigning to a single variable called result, you assign to two variables. But if you want to do this kind of syntax, you should ensure that the function will do the same exact thing. So it will return the same syntax. If that is the case, we can do the unpacking. So now you understood about this unpacking rules also. So next thing that you need to observe is about the sum built-in function. Hope you remember, we already told about the sum built-in function. I just don't want to touch base again, but just I am telling that. When you have like three variables, you can add those three variables and pass. So when you are returning, you can assign to a variable and see. For that, we know that we have a built-in function called as sum. But sum will not work on loose values. This is what you need to remember. So yesterday I told about sum, but I'm telling again. Whenever you have values, you need to pass like a iterable, like a list or a tuple or a set. So then if you pass, then it will do the summation. And also I told it will optionally take one offset value. If you give that, it will add that offset to that sum result. So this is all we learned. Even if you give like a dictionary, it will take the keys. Stated that the keys can be usable, we can use it. But the point is, for strings, we cannot apply the sum built-in function, which I told yesterday also. For that, for strings to summation means concatenation, we have delimiter.join. Similarly, I have written like multiple examples to show, but one assignments I want to bring to your notice. You need to create a small function like a sum, which would mimic like a function, like a sum. Means if you pass like a list of values, it should go to each of the variable and add that and give the result. Similarly, you can do the average also in the same fashion. Sum and like, average function. So you can take like a offset also when user is giving. And similarly, you can define a function which can implement like this. It will take like the input and it will need to give the output like this. So, so the sum function will do one more interesting point. I want to bring to your notice that typically if you pass like a sum, if you pass some values like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or something, it will add, right? If you do like a list or a tuple or a set, it will do the things. Finally, it will happen. If you are passing like a set, be careful if there were duplicates. So then what will happen if there were duplicates? It will try to remove the duplicate value. And it will do it. Let's say if you give it, it will give the result. If I have the same 55, same 55, same 55, same 55 multiple times also, you get the same result. Because when you took like a set, it will first filter the duplicate values and you will get the final values. And that we will do. Summation means commutative, right? Which one comes first, which one comes next, doesn't matter. But there is one interesting point with some built-in function is that whenever you have the values of like this particular way. So if I have some kind of data like this, observe here, I have a data where I have a list of tuples. If I apply like, some of this list of tuples, will it work? It will throw in error. But we can do something interesting. When you have all the inner values of same data type, leave about the outside, inner values are each of as tuple. So then we can do with a slight difference. So, so whenever you have like a sum, additionally, you need to pass one more value called as a empty brace. Observe carefully, this is very interesting. So this is one kind of like combining. When you have internal values, each of them like a tuple, you pass like an extra tuple. So then it will work. Similarly, if I have the example of a, say, inner values, which are like a list, say sum of, if I have, it doesn't matter what is the outer value. So outer may be list or tuple, doesn't matter. Inners, that's the most important. If I have 1, 2, and if I have like 3, 4. So this is called as like a flattening of the things. If I have something like this, now just imagine, if I want to sum this, I need to place a empty list. Did you see that all the values were flattened? But there is a problem with this summation function. If you pass the minimum, all the values not same data type, then we cannot do it. All should be either tuples, then you pass a tuple. All should be either lists within it, so you can pass a list. All should be ordinary numbers, you don't give anything, or like you give an offset of some integer, it will add it. But if you have different data types within it, it cannot do that. So now you need to write a function which can do that kind of action. So that kind of functionality. So how to do that? So you can loop over each of the value, check the data type. You can check the data type of each of the object using the isInstance built-in function. This is another built-in function. Means every time you need not check for the type, but you can check the isInstance. which will give the is instance of any variable. And if you say int, yes, it is int. It will give true or false if you pass like that. So this is all about the summation built-in function. And the next thing that we will learn is on to the next part.